never be liked here, so I'ma make this quite clear. For
Hello. What's up? And welcome to America's Worst Nightmare News. I am your host, Lady Kier, aka Coach K. And tonight we are going to get into our very first episode featuring Karmelo Anthony out of Frisco, Texas, and the stabbing of Austin Metcalf. I look forward to your opinions and your comments down below. Make sure you like and share the video and follow me for more information. So I want to take you back about 3 years ago. Back in 2022, back in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, a kid by the name of Karmelo Anthony at the time was at a pool, and he was visiting with family members at a pool there. And apparently there was a young lady there with her son by the name of Gino, who was a young boy. He was about 6 years old at that time. So Karmelo, I believe, was about 14 years old when this incident happens. And apparently she couldn't find her son. There was an indoor and outdoor pool. She was looking all around for him, could not find him. Apparently Karmelo, of course, got wind of the fact that they were looking for the little boy. He went to some far end or a blind spot. He was directed to go and look in that area. I'm not sure if it was by another adult or his own parent, because they were, people were helping her look for the child. And he went to whatever this blind spot is at this pool, and he came back out with the child in hand. So he saved this little boy's life, and was able to make it so that today his mother is still able to testify to that point on Karmelo's behalf. She has stepped forward in regards to this current situation with the murder as a character witness, as someone to say, hey, he really is a good boy. He really has a great heart, kind spirit, which is what is said and known about him throughout his community, as well as other people in his family. Karmelo is a AB honor roll student. He is considered a scholar in his district. He's in sports, playing football, as well as track, because this situation with the murder, the death, the stabbing actually happened at a track meet that was happening in April, on April 2nd. Of course, it didn't get to happen because of the incident. However, this is what they were all there for. So I think it's really important that we give context to Karmelo Anthony. I don't feel that it's fair for us to judge this young man based on this situation alone. It's a terrible mistake, a horrible mistake. I couldn't imagine what his family is going through, as a mother of a son, having to deal with that, and try to help guide and navigate him through this situation because of this mistake, as well as Austin's family, of course, because he passed. He had a twin brother who loved him that, he died in his brother's arms. And, it's, again, a very tragic situation. But I just want to make sure we are giving proper context to the situation, where you take the racism out of it, we take the ignorance out of it, and we allow ourselves to look at the facts, look at the situation, and look at things justly. And that'll get in more details later. But right now, I just want you guys to look at this picture. Look at young Karmelo in the middle, between those two women, as well as, in the other picture to your left here, it shows that, he has been a kind spirited person. And, the fact that he's made news in the past testifies to that, of his free spirit, his free heart, the loving and kindness that he has to offer to society. So I'm going to move forward. In the article, it further states, and I decided to make sure this part was highlighted, that it's a statement that came from the mother of the child, Gino. The water was cloudy and the pool divided into indoor and outdoor sections. Unable to find Gino, Carter asked Karmelo Anthony, who was 14, of Baton Rouge, to check in a blind spot. He came back up from out of the water with my son in his arms, Carter said. So Carter was the father of Gino. As he was walking, I snatched Gino out of the pool and laid him flat on his back, where he went ahead to start to do CPR and things like that until the emergency services could get there, paramedics could be able to assist. And that little boy's life was saved. And Karmelo went on to become an awesome young man in his community, with his family, as well as in school, scholastically and academically. Now, all teenagers get in trouble. All kids have a past. So we can't all act like we've ever made the best decisions. And we know at that age, your brain isn't fully functional to be able to make the proper decisions. You haven't fully developed. You don't understand all the consequences of your actions. Granted, Karmelo is very mature for his age. However, there are clearly some underlying pressures that probably led him to make those decisions that he made on that day. But I just want you guys to make sure you keep this in mind as you judge, as you look at the situation, that this is someone that wouldn't intentionally take a life. He's gone out his way to save one at a very young age. And now, at still a very young age, he's now responsible for having taken a life from someone. So we have to be willing, to look at both sides, to weigh it, and not condemn him. Yeah, we definitely shouldn't condemn him. Karmelo Anthony is 17 years old. He's a student at Frisco Centennial High School in Frisco, Texas, and he is now accused of the murder of Austin Metcalf. Austin Metcalf was 17 years old, and he was a student at Memorial High School in Frisco, Texas. He is the stabbing victim of Karmelo Anthony. So both families, the Metcalfs and the Anthonys, have both made statements to the press in regards to this incident with Austin Metcalf and Karmelo Anthony. Now, the Anthony family has left a statement that reads as follows. The family of 17-year-old student charged with murder in the fatal stabbing of another student at a high school track meet last week is sincerely saddened over the death. The teen's attorneys said in their first public statement since the incident, while calling for public to refrain from rushing to judgment. It's important, you guys, that we make sure we get all the facts involved. Make sure that we're not just dealing in rumors and speculation. We need to know what really happened to Austin Metcalf. The incident occurred on April 2nd at a Frisco Independent High School District Stadium in Frisco, Texas, during a track meet and field championship involving multiple schools in the district. So lots of people were there, not just Centennial High School and not just Memorial High School. Austin Metcalf, 17, an 11th grader at Frisco Memorial High School, died after police said another student stabbed him during an altercation in the bleachers at the meet. The suspect in the deadly stabbing, Karmelo Anthony, a student at Frisco Centennial High School, has been charged with first-degree murder, police said. His family has retained a Dallas-Fort Worth area defense attorney, Billy Clark of the Clark Law Firm, and attorney K of K Cole Law in the case, according to a joint press release from the firm's recent stories from ABC News. Now, the entire Anthony family are sincerely saddened that a life was lost and offer their deepest condolences to the family of Austin Metcalf. The attorney said in a statement on Monday that at this time we urge the public to refrain from rushing to judgment before all the facts are presented. They continued, Karmelo, like all citizens of the United States, is entitled to an impartial legal process, and we are committed to ensuring that Karmelo's rights are indeed protected and recognized in the judicial justice system. So, folks, investigation is underway. The case is getting started. So, let's move on and find out, what do we know so far? So, here's the rundown. This is what we know so far. On Wednesday morning of April 2nd, 2nd, 2025, 17-year-old Austin Metcalf, a junior at Memorial High School in Frisco, was killed at a UIL District 11-5A track meet at Kukendall Stadium. Police said a student from Centennial High School in Frisco, 17-year-old Karmelo Anthony, stabbed Metcalf in the chest during a fight. Anthony was arrested and is now charged with first-degree murder, y'all. First-degree murder. So the stakes are high. The stakes are high. And our black men and our black boys have already suffered so much in the system. The stakes are high. And it's important that we understand the consequences. It's important that we follow this case, because when we have examples from our side that show no justice during clear injustice, I have to see how this turns out. I don't know about y'all, but it makes me emotional. I have to see how this turns out. So, at America's Worst Nightmare News, and this is a nightmare, we're going to follow this story. We're going to keep you updated and see where the resolve goes. I just needed to get that out, because he's so young. He's an awesome young man. And now he is facing first-degree murder in Texas, where the death penalty is. You know? And he was in Collin County Jail on a $1 million bond. But on Monday, April 14th, just past Monday, a judge reduced his bond to $250K. And Karmelo was released that afternoon on bond to his lawyers and his family. So though it is a tragic time, and it's still melancholy in nature, I have to give thanks that at least the boy was released. At least he has a chance to be with his family again. At least his mama get a chance to hug him again, because Austin Metcalf's family won't. You know? And at least he will get his opportunity and chance at a fair trial. At least we will get an opportunity for all the facts to come out. At least we are in a place of unity and unification where we all can agree that we have to see this through to the truth. Win, lose, or draw. But I can't sit back and just allow the world to make Karmelo Anthony a monster, to create this illusion of this horrible young man. They want to make him out to be everything, of course, but a child of God. Some of you are probably doing the exact same thing. You probably already came to the exact same conclusions. But because I love us, I love how great we can be. I love how great we are. And in spite of all the negativity that surrounds, and all the things that are said, and all the things that are pushed, all the agendas that a lot of you may fall for, it is time for change. It's time to be aware and awaken. Not woke. Awaken. Open your eyes. Open your mind. Open your heart. We have to look at this story with an unbiased mind, and we need to brush over it with a fine-tooth comb. I can't lay down and watch another situation like Trayvon Martin. Granted, this is a different type of situation. But I can't sit back and watch another Tamir Rice. Yes, granted, it's a different situation. I cannot sit back and watch another George Floyd. I just can't sit back and watch the system continue to fail us. So I need all the facts. I need all the facts. And I need a fair and just jury of his peers in that courtroom. I need lawyers to have full access to evidence, summaries, witnesses. I need police reports untampered. I need everything to be exactly as it should be. Because when we go down this road of continually condemning, because we're talking about a stabbing, unfortunate stabbing, but a stabbing, not a gunfight, not something malicious or intentional. And when I say not malicious and intentional, in the fact that even based on the statements of all those around, he was not the agitator. He was not the initial aggressor. He was not sitting in that area to kill someone. Karmelo was there for the track meet. He was there as a student. He was there waiting, taking a seat. Granted, under the wrong tent. But he was taking a seat. Nobody said he came over there and started any mess. Nobody said he said anything to anybody. Nobody said he came over and touched anyone. But what we do know is that Karmelo was touched more than once before the stabbing happened. What we do know is that Karmelo had no ill intentions. And we know that because he stayed at the scene of the crime. He did not run away. He did not try to go against the police once they arrived. He complied with their commands. And he simply stated, I did it out of self-defense. So again, let's just look at his face. See into his spirit. Think about your sons or daughters, nieces or nephews, uncles or brothers. Think about it. Think about the different sentiments on race and equality that have existed in this country for decades upon decades. Think about living in Texas, where we know they do it big, everything big. And there's also a lot of different types of violence and aggression amongst their youth, as well as some of the adults there. But we're talking about two high schoolers. Two high schoolers. Based on the latest court documents that have come out, there's been further context to show you guys that Karmelo was in a certain place in his mind mentally that pushed him to a place where he felt like he needed to protect himself, thereby stabbing young Austin Metcalf. The court document states witnesses pointed him out to a school resource officer who was the first to arrive on the scene. The officer spotted Karmelo at the north end of the track. The suspect was instructed to keep his hands up in the air. During this time, the suspect said verbally out loud, "I was protecting myself," the report states. The suspect also told the officer, "He puts his hands on me. He put his hands on me." After the officer mentioned to others that he had alleged suspect in custody, the report states Anthony said, "I'm not alleged. I did it." So he owned up to it. Again, he didn't run from it. He didn't try to lie about what he did. He didn't try to point fingers anywhere. He stated his truth. He was protecting himself, and he can admit that he killed him because he was protecting himself. "He put his hands on me. I told him not to," Anthony continued as officers walked him out of the stadium in handcuffs to the squad car. The report states Anthony also asked the officers, "Is he going to be okay?" And he asked if what had happened could be considered self-defense. The officers took pictures of the blood on Anthony's hands and everywhere else. So the reality is, based on this statement alone, we know that he did not intentionally try to kill Austin Metcalf because he asked, was he okay? However, he did state and understood that he was defending himself and that he did what he felt he had to do because Austin had put his hands on him. Now, for those of us who understand what "put your hands on me" means, that means he did more than just touch him, as these reports keep trying to say. There was more than a touch. Putting hands on you means a few things, in my opinion. It means that either you push me, you smack me, or you punch me. I don't know what it means for some of you. But when I think that someone has touched me in a way that is a violation that makes me feel harmed and violated in my space, those are the things that come to mind. Something that I felt could cause me harm or made me feel as if you were trying to harm me. It's just unfortunate that Karmelo resorted to stabbing him as a way to solve the issue. And again, that's why I'm waiting on all the facts to unroll, because I have to believe there is more to this story. And I've heard some things that might give that relevancy. So we're going to get to that. We're going to get to that real soon. These are really a few of the only crime scene photos that I've been able to come across. You don't really see anything in particular. You do still see some of the people surrounding the area. It looks like some items may still be left out, but clearly Austin has already been removed from the site. This one here gives a little bit of a different angle of the site. I think it looks like you can kind of see where there may have been a little rustle and bustle because things kind of look a little thrown around and out of place and disorganized, considering that they were all there for a track meet that hadn't started yet. Kind of looks like things did get into a disarray. But however, they don't have any pictures, of course, that are showing Austin's, body lying around or anything like that. And if anyone does have those things, please do not post those type of items or use that as a part of your storyline. It's horrible. As a mother, I would feel horrified and disrespected if I saw that. So we're going to follow this story with considerations for both families in mind. So the police report is out, and Karmelo Anthony has finally got it to where we are going to be able to see what really happened in this case. His family, his lawyers have been working diligently to make sure that he gets not only the best representation possible for this type of situation, but he is heard and he is vindicated because they do believe that he is not guilty. It is said to be a case of self-defense. Now, how that is taken, can they prove that it was self-defense? Will we be able to get all the details to actually get a reasonable result to where we actually feel like justice can be served in this situation? Not only for Austin Metcalf and his family, but we want to make sure that this child, this son of ours, this nephew of ours, is getting the right amount of justice as well. We want to make sure that his side is heard. We want to make sure that people understand that he is not a bad person. He is not a bad child. He has a great reputation, and it is only fair that we treat him as such, regardless of how the situation came out. He is still just a 17-year-old boy, and I am standing with him until the very end. So Karmelo Anthony, as you guys can see, a lot of people have had a lot of discrepancy in the way that the name is spelled. But as you can see with the official police report, Karmelo is with a K. So Karmelo Sincere Anthony was arrested on April 2nd, 2025 at around about 10 a.m. Now, the arrest report has a various different officers that gave their statements. The initial arrest officer, as you can see, is Eduardo Cortez, number 3472. And then the second arresting officer was Allison Ricci. So they were currently dispatched to the location in Frisco, Texas, and this is what we found out. So as you can see, he has first degree felony murder charges. We know that this comes with some heavy consequences. So it is very, very important, again, that we get all the details. So I'm just going to go through this information with you guys just so you can get a clarity, just so you can make sure that you have all the facts as we watch this case play through, once the court gets involved and starts that process, of judgment. We need to make sure that we've gone through all the possible processes of elimination because we do not want him to be railroaded. We want this trial to be fair and just. We want all families to feel like justice was served on their children's behalf. And it's just a hard fence, to straddle, but nonetheless, I am on the fence. I want to show support for both Austin Metcalf's family as well as Karmelo Anthony's family. It's important that we keep a balance. So, initial narrative says on April 2nd, 2025 at 1001 hours, Staley School Resource Officer Eduardo Cortez heard over the radio dispatch call out a stabbing call at David Kukendall Stadium, 6927-A Stadium Lane in Frisco, Collin County, Texas. FPD Frisco Police Department call notes indicate that an athlete was stabbed. The suspect was reported as being a black male wearing a gray hoodie and blue sweatpants. Now, I find it interesting that they notate that an athlete had been stabbed, but not that the black male wearing the gray hoodie and blue sweatpants was also an athlete as well there for the same reasons. I don't like blanket statements like that just kind of leave the details open. It makes it seem as if Karmelo was just somebody that walked up on the site and was just there and he had no reason for being there. That's not true. Moving on. I immediately left my office, ran across to the Staley Middle School parking, 6927 Stadium Lane, Frisco, Texas, lot towards a southwest entrance into the stadium. As I entered the stadium, two high school age students informed me that the victim was on the north end of the stadium by the bleachers under a Memorial High School tent. I did not identify these students. Next, I proceeded towards the north end of the stadium, visitors side on foot. As I got closer to the north end, I could see the Memorial High School tent with multiple individuals under the tent. Once I arrived onto the north side bleachers, an adult male who was on the track pointed out the suspect. I was not able to identify the witness. That individual that was pointing out to me was a black male wearing a gray hooded sweater, excuse me, and a dark colored Nike pants. The suspect at this point was on the track on the north end. There was a chain link fence that separated me from the suspect. I gave the suspect instructions to keep his hands up in the air. During this time, the suspect said verbally out loud, "I was protecting myself," which we've heard that he has very consistently said that throughout his time incarcerated for these charges, as well as now that he is out, it is being maintained that he was defending himself. It should be noted that I had not questioned him about the incident when he made that comment. I asked him if he had any weapons. He said no. I patted him down for weapons while we were walking along the fence. I did not locate any on his person. I instructed the male to continue walking along the fence, which he complied, towards an area where there was an opening in the fence that led off the track. While walking him off the track, the suspect also said he put his hands on me. Then I detained the suspect in handcuffs. He handcuffed behind his back and had him sit down on the ground. Officer A. Ritchie had arrived on the scene at this time. So that's the second arriving officer at the scene. I conducted another pat down of his person and then searched his person after he gave me consent. No weapons were located. While the suspect sat on the ground, I advised that I had the alleged suspect. The suspect then responds and says, "I'm not alleged. I did it." So he's taking full accountability, but he is standing on the fact that he was defending himself. Next, Officer Ritchie and I walked the suspect to the patrol vehicle, number 2412. This is Officer A. Ritchie's patrol vehicle, which was on the northeast gate of Kukendale Stadium. Let's see. As we were walking to the squad car, the suspect was emotional and said he put his hands on me. I told him not to. I did not question the suspect about the incident while he was escorted to the patrol vehicle. I searched his person once again and I had him sit in the back seat area, driver's side of the patrol vehicle, number 2412. While the suspect was in the back seat, I noticed fresh blood on his left middle finger. I verbally acknowledged that I saw the blood out loud, so it would be captured on my body worn camera. It should also be noted that the suspect asked me, "Is he going to be okay?" while he was in the back seat. I then identified the suspect. So when Karmelo got into the police car, not only was he stating consistently that Austin had put his hands on him and that he was defending himself, but he still had an inkling of worry about Austin's condition. He wanted to know, was Austin okay? Now, he didn't get the answer to that immediately, obviously, because the officers don't seem to be responding to any of his questions or statements. And I guess that's because they want to make sure that everything is caught on camera and all details are together. Maybe, I don't know, because normally when officers show up, they ask you what happened. So I'm just kind of confused why there was never any questioning or anything about what happened, based off what these officers are saying. Um, Anyway, it should be noted that the suspect asked me, "Is he going to be okay?" while he was in the back seat. I then identified the suspect. He provided his name and date of birth verbally as Karmelo Anthony, black male with date of birth of, they leave that blank, of course, which I ran through FPD dispatch. Officer J. Hancock arrived on the scene and remained with me and the suspect at this point. Karmelo was then checked via eSchool database for FISD students to also confirm his identity. The identifying information he provided matched the individual I had in custody, Karmelo Anthony. Next, I was advised by Sergeant Holland to transport the subject to Frisco Police Department jail. Officer Hancock and I transported him to the FPD jail. Again, I did not question Karmelo about the incident. So, a couple of things within this statement here. It seems as if clearly when they identified the suspect, um, clearly Karmelo doesn't have a criminal record. He clearly didn't come up in the criminal database, which is partially why he was let out on bond and let out on a lesser amount of bond while the bond was dropped, because he has no criminal history. He is not a bad kid. He literally had to identify him through the school system, through the school database for students, because that's what Karmelo is. He is a young man, a student. He is still somebody's son. He is still somebody's child. So we need all the facts. We need all the facts. Moving on. Upon arriving at the Frisco jail, Karmelo was escorted in the intake area. Frisco Police Department jail staff changed him out into jail attire. I remained with the jail staff the entire time that he was changed over. The clothes that Karmelo was wearing was placed in the Frisco Police Department paper evidence bag. The clothes remained in my possession from this point on. Upon Karmelo being placed into a jail cell, I continued to keep possessions of his clothes. I returned to my patrol number 2412, his car, patrol car, along with Officer Hancock, which was in the FPD's Sally Port, and placed Karmelo's clothes in the back trunk area. I drove patrol vehicle number 2412 out of the Sally Port and parked the squad car in the FPD patrol parking area. Karmelo's clothes remained in the trunk area of the vehicle 2412. FPD crime scene technician Kay Dillard then took possession of Karmelo's clothes. I added my body-worn camera to the case. I have no further information to report. So that is the information based off of the initial police officer, Eduardo Cortez, who was the first person to come upon Karmelo Anthony, who is also the resource officer at the middle school in the area. So, moving on to some supplemental information and evidence that adds to what Eduardo had said. Officer Richie Allison, of course, gave her statement showing where, of course, she arrived and was wearing Frisco police uniform and was operating a fully marked Frisco police vehicle number 2412. At about that time, I was dispatched to the report of the stabbing at David Kukendale Stadium. Frisco Police Dispatch advised an athlete had been stabbed. The suspect was described as a black male wearing a gray hooded sweatshirt and blue sweatpants. Again, I don't like this breakdown of the description of the black male. He was to a student. So we need to add those details in there so it doesn't sound like just some random black man or black person came on this place where there was a bunch of high school students and attacked them. We need it to be in proper context. So yes, this is what Karmelo was wearing. Yes, he is a black male, but he is also a student and an athlete that was at that particular championship meeting. So anyway, when I arrived on scene, I approached the track field area, saw Officer Cortez kneeling next to the black male wearing a gray hooded sweatshirt and blue sweatpants. The male, later identified as Karmelo Anthony, black male, birthday not listed, was in handcuffs and was seated in the sidewalk by the entrance of the track. As I approached Officer Cortez stated Anthony was the alleged suspect. Anthony then made a spontaneous statement and stated, "I am not alleged. I did it." So she got there in time to hear that part. Officer Cortez conducted a pat search of Anthony's person to ensure Anthony did not have any weapons and found nothing of the evidentiary value. Officers Cortez and I then walked Anthony to my pre-search vehicle, and Anthony was seated in the rear driver's side compartment of my patrol vehicle. While walking to my patrol vehicle, Anthony made another spontaneous statement and asked if what happened could be considered self-defense. I replied by telling Anthony I did not know what happened. It should be noted in the car camera in my patrol vehicle was activated prior to Anthony being placed in my patrol vehicle. While Officer Cortez assisted Anthony into my patrol vehicle, I noticed Anthony had blood on his left middle finger. I grabbed my department issued digital camera and took a photograph of Anthony's hands. I later uploaded the photograph to the crime scene folder under this case number. Officer Cortez remained with my patrol vehicle and Anthony while I provided assistance with scene security. Nothing further from this officer. So she came in to some pictures of the blood stains that he had on him and then moved on to assist with security. Now, Officer Will Otis, who came in a little later after the arrest had been made. Um, I want to scroll into and kind of get to the nuts and bolts of what to me was important in his statement. For the most part, he is the officer that actually came in. And let me just make sure. It looks like, let's see. Okay, so let me just read this for you guys. Okay. So Sergeant Otis was working the 50th sector as the sergeant. He was in full Frisco Police Department uniform with distinct patches and badge and police duty belt. He was also in a marked Frisco Police Department patrol vehicle, number 2315. He was relatively close to the call and placed himself on it around 10:02 hours and responded to the call with his patrol vehicle's overhead emergency lights and sirens activated. He arrived to the call at around 10:06 hours. Um, Sergeant Otis arrived at the stadium and began walking up to the location. At around this time, Officer Cortez and Officer Ricci were walking a black male suspect away from the stadium. The suspect was crying hysterically, something they leave out, something they've left out in all of this. All of this that's been said by the first two officers that got there and arrived on the scene. They talk about how he says he's not guilty, and that he was defending himself, but they never talk about the amount of remorse that he had, the amount of trauma that he experienced, and what he was going through at that moment, having had made that decision to take someone else's life. But this officer specifically details that Karmelo was crying hysterically. Almost makes me want to cry because I can only imagine the heaviness on his spirit and his heart from doing what he had to do and knowing that it would change his life forever. Knowing that, as they state so eloquently, repeatedly inside of this information, that he is a black male, black man who has now stolen the life of a young white male. These are trying times, folks. And if you think these kids don't understand the heaviness of the world we live in today, you're mistaken. If you think that that young man really went to this event wanting to take a life, you're part of the problem. We've got to do better with ourselves and with our children, our way of thinking. We've got to do better. I know. I'm always emotional. I know. As y'all get to know me, you'll probably see me cry a lot. But it's because I love my people. And I just hate that so much is going on. And I need to speak on it. I've got so much to say, and so much just keeps happening that it is really, really hard. Really hard not to have an opinion, not to want to help, not to do any type of advocacy. I specialize in community advocacy, mental health, post-trauma healing. So it's important to me that we get the facts for this young man, that he is not unjustly persecuted and prosecuted. We don't need this moment to turn into another reason why we can't come together. There's so much happening in this country. So much happening in this country. We cannot allow ourselves to continue to be divided. Yes, I'm talking to you, black people. But yes, I'm also talking to you, white people, Mexican people. We live here together. We have got to figure it out. We've got to figure it out. Ain't no going back to the past. Um, Ain't no separation happening between the races anymore. Everybody's intermixed and interbred. Equality is a big thing. We're not going back to the past. So we got to figure out how we going to move forward together. We got to take more responsibility for what we're teaching our children. We have to take more responsibility for our emotional and mental development within our households and within ourselves. It is way too many out here that needs to do their own shadow work, that needs to be doing an inside job on themselves. And they haven't taken the time to do it. And because you haven't taken the time to do it, you are giving birth to children who are already broken, who are coming up in hurt households, who are going out into the streets not knowing how to navigate their emotions and their thought processes. We have got to do better. These are children we're talking about, not adults, children, high schoolers. Apparently, both very, very, very bright students. And nonetheless, we're still here. Moving on. So the suspect was crying hysterically. Please see the other officers' narratives for their involvement. Obviously, Sergeant Otis. Sergeant Otis walked up to the visitor bleachers and observed the victim being treated by Frisco Fire Department. So when Sergeant Otis got there, he made his way over to Austin at the bleachers under the Memorial High School tent where he was. Personnel and also the athletic trainers were still there. The weather began to turn and it began to heavily downpour. At this time, some of the FISD staff moved the memorial tent to cover the victim and the FFD personnel. Sergeant Otis began using his city-issued phone to snap crime scene photos to preserve as much of the scene as possible due to the weather and the large gathering of the people that were involved in the incident. Other officers began to set up a crime scene with tape, moving non-essential personnel out of the immediate area. The officers on scene were informed that the knife that was used was tossed and was still believed to be somewhere close. Eventually, one of the witnesses says they remember seeing it on the bleacher still. Officer Shawls, who was able to locate the knife, it was located between rows 9 and 10 near seat 30, closest to the aisle partially open. The rain began to come down again heavily, and it was determined that instead of moving the knife, the officers would cover it with a large blue tarp. Sergeant Otis assisted in preserving the immediate crime scene as much as possible, while the other personnel tended to the victim and eventually transported him. At around this time, Officer Wetzel had the crime scene log and began logging the individuals on the call to the best of his ability. Lieutenant Crawford and Pemberton relieved Sergeant Otis of the scene. Sergeant Otis went back to the police department to download his body cam and the photos he took with the city-issued phone. Sergeant Otis' issued phone had a total of 33 photos that were used to document the incident scene. During the download of the initial photos, formatting was incompatible with the crime scene folder. He re-downloaded the photos that he took, and they were able to be saved properly for preservation of evidence. At this time, there is nothing further to add to this report. So that is the end for Officer Otis. Now, let's get into Officer Wetzel's report. He says, when I arrived on the scene, let's see, I responded to the report of the stabbing of David Cookendale Stadium at David Cookendale Stadium at 8825 7th Street. The original call note stated an athlete had been stabbed in the chest and that the suspect that stabbed the victim goes to Centennial High School. So at least he knew he was another student, even though they don't mention him being an athlete. Again, I don't like the contexts they keep trying to paint around Karmelo. Athletic trainers were on site and were providing care to the victim and advised he was not conscious and not breathing. The notes also indicated that the suspect was a black male with a goatee and a short hair wearing Centennial gear. I arrived on scene at approximately 10:06 hours. When I arrived on scene, I grabbed a roll of crime scene tape from my trunk and proceeded to the visitors' bleachers where dispatch advised the victim was. While I was walking towards the bleachers, I was approached by a witness who identified himself as such and such. And he began telling me what happened. And I asked him where the stabbing occurred. Such and such advised it happened under the Memorial High School pop-up tent and the visitors' bleachers. I immediately informed Sergeant Otis where the witness stated the stabbing occurred and gave him the crime scene tape to start securing the scene. I then had Blank move to the walkway under the visitors' bleachers out of the rain to further speak with me. The following is a summary of my contact with blank and blank. Advised he was sitting under the Memorial High School pop-up tent with his team and was near the victim. Austin and the suspect, who was later identified as Karmelo Anthony. Anthony was from Centennial High School and was sitting under the Memorial School tent. Austin had told Anthony that he needed to move out from under their team's tent, and Anthony grabbed his bag, opened it, and reached inside and then proceeded to tell Austin, "Touch me and see what happens." No one really thought Anthony really had any weapons in his bag, and Austin proceeded to touch Anthony, and then Anthony told Austin to punch him and see what happens. A short time later, Austin grabbed Anthony to tell him to move, and Anthony pulled out what Blank recalled as a black knife and stabbed Austin once in the chest and then ran away. Austin began grabbing his chest and telling everyone to get help. Blank advised he did not know Anthony's name, but stated another Memorial Track member, such and such, was friends with Anthony, and he could identify Anthony. Such and such described Anthony as a black male, skinny, with a possibly a goatee, short, puffy hair, and wearing a Centennial High School clothing. This included my contact. This concluded my contact with such and such. I then was instructed to start the crime scene log. I retrieved a crime scene log from my patrol vehicle and began starting the crime scene log. I was later relieved by Officer Shaws, who took over the crime scene log and cleared the scene. Nothing further attached to original report. So that is what Officer Wetzel had to say. So let's see what Mr. Hancock says. After hearing more dispatch call information, I drove to the scene. While en route, I heard Officer Cortez say he has the suspect in custody. When I got to the scene, I looked for Officer Cortez and went straight to him to hold security with the suspect that he cuffed and secured in the police squad. Multiple witnesses were providing statements to officers where the stabbing occurred at the Memorial High School track tent. Only a short time later, Officer Cortez and myself escorted the suspect, Karmelo Sincere Anthony, to the Frisco Adult Holding Facility. Anthony was transitioned off to the jail without incident. All jail paperwork was completed, and the CID took the investigation from there. All right, so he's pretty small and basic on his information. So, let's see. Officer Alvin Fisher, one of the reporting officers who came to the scene and actually spoke with some of the folks and took some statements. He says, I began asking people if they were witnesses to anything. I made contact with Hunter Metcalf and the blank blank, a black male. They were both breathing heavily and crying due to the nature of the events. So Hunter Metcalf, this is the officer that actually spoke with Austin's brother after the incident. They were with the coaches on the field and it was pouring down rain. We made the decisions to relocate to the locker room just to the east to get out of the rain. Once in there, things calmed down a little bit. However, they were still hysterical and could not really talk. In there, I learned Hunter was the brother of the victim. I attempted to ask them both what had happened. I could not really get anything out of Hunter, but such and such stated he wanted to speak. I asked him what happened, and he stated that they were all sitting on the bleachers under the Memorial High School tent when another male who he did not know walked over and sat under the tent. Blank then said Austin, the victim, told this male that since he did not go to Memorial that he had to leave the tent. Austin and the male went back and forth, and then Austin stood up and pushed the male to get him out of the tent. Now, after all of this commentary, all of these statements, all of the things we've heard, remember that word I was talking about earlier? How everybody kept talking about, oh, he touched him, touched. I told y'all, ain't no touch in confrontation. When you're in a confrontation and somebody is actually aggressively and you're the aggressor coming at somebody, touch usually means either your fist or you pushed or you kick or hit that person in some type of way. So now this black male who is a part of Memorial High School's team, who is a friend of Austin and Hunter, clearly because he was there. He came in to give his statement with Hunter, and he too was hysterical and crying. So clearly, he's somebody that cared about Austin. He's somebody that actually felt a way about what he saw, and he was hurt and traumatized by it as well. But in spite of that, he is giving specific details, okay? So let's get back to it so we can make sure we're listening to those specific details. Again, I asked him what happened, and he stated that they were all sitting on the bleachers. Then Blank then said Austin, the victim, told this male that since he did not go to Memorial, he had to leave the tent. Blank had said during this time of arguing, oh, hold on. I think I went, let me see. Told the male he did not go to Memorial. He had to leave the tent. Austin and the male went back and forth. And then Austin stood up and pushed the male to get him out of the tent. Let me read that again for clarity. The witness then said, Austin, the victim, told this male that since he did not go to Memorial, he had to leave the tent. Talking is one thing. Austin and the male went back and forth. Still talking. Not an issue there. We can argue all day, right? And then Austin stood up and pushed the male to get him out of the tent. The witness had said during this time of arguing, the male was reaching around in his bag he had. It was at this time the male took out a knife and stabbed Austin and then left the scene. This was all the witness remembered when he talked to me. After this, I then stood by with 3 athlete witnesses until CID arrived and interviewed them. I was then relieved by an SRO and went back to patrol. Nothing further. So that is the first witness statement that comes from the friend of Hunter and Austin Metcalf that specifically details what happened. Yes, they were arguing. Yes, Austin got up and told him he needed to leave, and that is okay because we can argue. But then he details that Austin stood up, walked up on the Karmelo Anthony, pushed him, at least based on that statement, pushed him. Even though we know a previous statement from someone else said that Karmelo said to the guy, punch me and see what happens. So there's some discrepancies there. So we went from punch me and see what happens to now, oh, well, he pushed him and then Karmelo stabbed him. So that's why I said we need all the facts. All these pieces count because it shows intention. So we need to know this. So moving on. Mike Crawford, another officer on the scene. So he was there He arrived on the scene and observed medical personnel and several bystanders standing next to a subject, later identified as the victim, Austin Metcalf. The medical personnel were actively engaged in life saving measures with Mr. Metcalf. I observed that a crime scene was created around the area and began collecting names and contact information of the bystanders within the scene. I then met with Officer Wetzel and directed him to begin a crime scene log. As he was getting the needed paperwork, I took over his responsibilities of monitoring a witness to the event. Ultimately, the witness was taken to another area of the ring, and Officer Shaws took over this crime scene log, and I forwarded information about the bystanders to him. From that point forward, I worked coordinating response from SRO, CID, CSI, and PIO, and took no other action at the scene. My body worn camera did not activate when I initially arrived on the scene, but I did activate it when I discovered it wasn't recording while waiting with the witness. Nothing further. All right. So, Jacob Shawls, okay? Jacob Shawls. On Wednesday, Officer Charles was working at the Student Opportunity Center. Says upon my arrival, I tried to get an update location of the suspect. I could not see Officer Cortez when I arrived. Officer Cortez informed over the radio that he had the suspect in custody. At this time, I turned my attention to the victim. Multiple FISD trainers were already I lost my place. Excuse me, folks. Let me see. We're already performing CPR. I could see blood on and around the victim. At this time, medics arrived and began life-saving measures. I coordinated with other officers on the scene to secure the location. By this time, the students and the FISD staff had cleared the area. I used crime scene tape and over the medics and victim to attempt to preserve the evidence that we could. A memorial coach approached me and informed me that he was with the students who claimed to see the entire altercation. I told the coach to quickly inform me that he knew where the suspect threw the knife and pointed to me to its location. I located the knife with Sergeant Otis and could see blood on the knife. I quickly used my city issued phone to take pictures before the rain could wash the blood away. Sergeant Otis located a blue tarp, and we decided we should cover the knife without touching it in an attempt to preserve any evidence. It was windy and raining hard. Once we positioned the tarp over the knife, I reached down and grabbed a backpack left in the stands to weigh the tarp down and threw it up by where Sergeant Otis was positioning tarp. It was later discovered that the backpack I threw up onto the tarp was the suspect's backpack. It was the only Centennial backpack located within all of the Memorial High School backpacks in that area of the stands. After securing the scene with the crime scene tape and attempting to preserve as much of the evidence as possible, I assisted other officers with locating other possible witnesses. Officer Wetzel was maintaining scene security while I was assisting the other officers after the medics transported the victim. I relieved him of that post so he could go back to the patrol. I maintained scene security until the car was cleared. Photos will be uploaded to the crime scene folder and my body cam will be downloaded at the end of the shift. No further information. So everybody's just doing their job. However, these little things that we are finding out are important. We are finding out the different statements from the witnesses. We are finding out all the different pieces of evidence that they found and some things that might be a lack thereof. Um, so we're going to move on to the next set of statements because I want to make sure that you guys get to hear as much as possible on this information. So let me just see. Let's see. We're going to move on to more important. The rest of them, like I said, some of it's kind of redundant. Let's see. So, Officer Justin Newton, I responded to the Texas Health Plano to assist with this case. I was tasked with meeting the ambulance at the hospital. I arrived prior to the ambulance and waited for them to arrive. They arrived at 10:46 hours with the victim, Austin Metcalf, who was brought into the trauma bay for treatment. At 10:53 hours, Dr. Ko pronounced Austin deceased. Once he was pronounced, staff stopped treatment and disconnected the cords and the tubes from the machines without removing anything from the body itself. While on the scene, I took possession of the clothing worn by Austin and maintained possession of the items until CSI Dillard took them from me. While on scene, Officer Landon requested assistance in lifting the sheets of the body to take photos. I then placed the sheets back when complete. I then stood by the room for security while Officer Landon, Officer Hernandez, and the CSI dealer took additional photos. At one point, they rolled the body and removed shorts from Austin which were bagged and stayed in my custody until CSI took them at 13:24 hours. Family was allowed into the scene to view the body. I was informed by the staff that they would be allowed to touch the head and feet of Austin, which they did. At 13:37 hours, nurses from the hospital bagged Austin in a body bag. Mm. It's tough to read. I won't even lie. It's tough to read. I'm a very imaginative person, and as I read this little piece of statement from the officer at the hospital, again, my heart definitely goes out to the Metcalf family. I do not want y'all to think that I do not have any compassion or sympathy for you or your family, because a loss is definitely a loss. A child was lost. Your child was lost in particular. And it's sad. It's hurtful. Yeah, I can shed tears for you too, because I have a son. And God knows this is the last thing that any parent wants. And, it just hit me that your son died around like 10 a.m. And, you guys didn't even get to view the body. You didn't even get to view the body probably until about 1 p.m. So you had to sit, digest, process for hours before you got to see your baby. And for that, I feel for you, because that is hard. As a mother and as a parent in general, that's hard. So again, do not take what I'm doing as anything less than an opportunity for us to be informed, educated, and find a way to move beyond this tragedy, because that's really what America's Worst Nightmare News is about. We are here to inform, educate, maybe some entertainment. But for the most part, I am here to share with you the things that matter in our communities, the things that trigger us, the things that cause us pain, the things that force us to change. When we get uncomfortable in any situation, it forces you to create change. Now, that can be positive change or negative change, but it will be change nonetheless. My goal with America's Worst Nightmare News is that you will be changed in the way that you will never be the same. That it will allow you to make better, more informed decisions. That it will allow us to speak in a way that is valued, in a way that matters for ourselves, for our families, for our community, for this country. We are all here together. I can't stress that enough. And as much as it hurts and as easy as it is to make this thing, you know, totally about black and white, this is just really about fair justice. I just want y'all to be fair. Be fair. Be realistic. Pay attention to the facts, to the details. Pay attention to the lifestyles of all those involved before we make brash decisions about the life of this young man. Unfortunately, there is nothing further we can do. about the life of Austin Metcalf. Besides, his family doing something that will allow his legacy to stay alive, him being a great athlete, him having, a twin brother who will definitely carry him in his spirit the rest of his life. I want us to remember that Karmelo was a victim too. Victim of circumstance, victim of situation. But nonetheless, he was a victim too. It's just unfortunate that in his victimized state, he took the life of someone else. And again, it's a hard fence to straddle. And this is one case where I'm not sure. I'm not clear if there will be real justice. Honestly, a life has been lost. A life has been changed. Who knows how this may affect Karmelo's mental health, or what type of person it may force him to turn out to be now because of this horrific experience. It's just a sad case all the way around. But we're wrapping up this police report. Yeah. So to finish out his statement before I get there, I want to notate that Officer Justin Newton also says at the end of his statement that at the conclusion of the call, I took my camera off of covert mode and went to turn it off. At that point, I learned the camera had failed to activate. Due to it being on covert mode, I did not see the indicator lights on the top of the camera. So, this is an officer whose body cam was not on, so he didn't get anything. There was another person's whose body cam was on, but they had some technical issues. So I'm gonna need the police to make sure y'all get these body cams together. Even though in this case particularly, I guess it's not necessarily a necessity to the case specifically, but I don't want these excuses for the future. Like, fix your technical difficulties. Now, Officer Andrew Higgins was working the desk officer at 7200 Stonebrook Parkway, Frisco, Collin County, Texas, at approximately 10:42 hours. Okay, so blank and blank walked into the main lobby stating that they had witnessed the stabbing and was told to come to the lobby to complete a witness statement. I gave blank a voluntary witness statement, which he worked on until detectives arrived to speak with him. Blank left the detectives and I returned to my normal duties, nothing further. So Officer Higgins just handed out the witness statements paperwork. Now, this is going into the final piece of paperwork that I wanted to look at with you guys. This is Officer Craig Thomas. He is actually the person that did majority of taking the witness statements as you look through it. So it says, upon arrival, I made first contact with Officer Cortez, who was standing next to the marked police vehicle. Officer Cortez advised he had detained the suspect and he was in the patrol vehicle. I then responded to the victim scene that was in the north bleachers. As I walked up, I noticed Frisco Fire Department personnel was attempting to provide life-saving measures to a subject later identified as Memorial High School Austin Metcalf. As other officers worked the scene, I was asked to respond to the stadium's medical locker room area and keep the following Memorial High School students' witnesses separated until detectives could speak with them. So there was 3 students that were inside of the locker rooms who they were meeting with, and he needed to keep them separate. While with them, I was told to take their cell phones from them and later turn them over to Sergeant Bossonette. After being relieved, I was asked to make contact with all FISD athletes that had been placed on high school buses. Below is a list of the students who identified themselves as witnesses to the stabbing of Austin Metcalf. So we have several students on several buses here, somewhere around about let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. See, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21 people on school buses. Let's see, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27. Okay, so those are 27 students that he was able to track down from the different schools that were there for the track meet. I also met by the following. I was also met by the following coaches who advised me they witnessed the incident. So 2 coaches, one from Centennial, one from Heritage High School, and then 2 more coaches from Independence High School. So the Independence High School witnessed the incident. The Centennial High School coach and the Heritage High School coach heard the suspect confessing to the stabbing. So they all have their different pieces to that puzzle. That is actually really the sum up of everything we currently know about what is going on with Karmelo, and what is involved around his case. There is lots more to be discovered. Of course, we have not even got to the court case yet. It hasn't begun yet. So there are a lot more details that will come out. All the witness statements will eventually be revealed from all the different people that they are interviewing or have yet to interview. So I want y'all to stay with me. Stay with me, because we are going to get the facts. So this is Karmelo Anthony's very first mugshot. Hopefully it will be his only mugshot. Again, he is 17 years old. He is known to be a great student, and he had $1 million bond for these charges. Now, if you kept up with the latest information, then you know that he has been released. Now, that $1 million bond, luckily, was dropped down to $250,000, where it made it possible for him to actually make that bond and get out and go back home with his family, which is where he is at right now. He has a long road ahead. There are a lot of things that are going to come up in the future, but we want to make sure that we give him our full support. So what I want to show you next is the latest news report with Fox News out of Texas, Dallas, and Houston, where they are actually showing you his release from jail.
Within the past hour, 17-year-old Karmelo Anthony has been released from the Collin County Jail after posting bond. A judge reduced his bond this morning from $1 million to $250,000. He's facing a murder charge after police say he stabbed another teenager, Austin Metcalf, while at a track meet at a Frisco high school. Stephen Dial is in McKinney with more. Stephen.
Karmelo Anthony left the Collin County Jail in a suit but had nothing to say to the reporters before he got into that vehicle. The district court judge says that she looked at all the factors in this case, him not having a criminal history, and that led to her making her decision to reduce his bond. 17-year-old Karmelo Anthony was silent after bonding out of the Collin County Jail and being placed on house arrest.
How is this self-defense?
2 days after the family of Austin Metcalf buried their son, they were at the Collin County Courthouse for a bond reduction hearing Monday. Karmelo Anthony is accused of stabbing and killing Metcalf at a Frisco track meet earlier this month. The case has quickly become national news, drawing a lot of attention, resulting in threats and increased security at the courthouse.
Threats and, talk of race war and all kinds of insanity isn't good for, obviously, the Anthony family. It's not good for the Metcalf family.
Cameras were not allowed inside the courtroom, but we did capture the Anthony family arriving. His father, Andrew, testified in the hearing. District Court Judge Angela Tucker said that she's never gotten this volume of calls and had to have this level of security in the courtroom in her 13 years on the bench. Court documents say Anthony stabbed Metcalf during a fight. When an officer arrived, court documents say Anthony told the officer, "I was protecting myself." Collin County District Attorney Greg Willis spoke after the hearing.
The judge has made the call, and so what's important is what's next, and it's our job to be level-headed, to be fact-based, and to follow the truth wherever it leads.
Anthony's father testified he's taking a leave from work because of the incident, and his wife is a stay-at-home mother with 3 other children. During the hearing, the prosecution brought up the fact that more than $400,000 have been raised for the Anthony family, saying a reduction is not needed because they have the funds. A big question in this case will be, why did Anthony bring a weapon to a high school stadium? It's a question that was asked of his attorney.
That's an understandable question, but it's not something that, frankly, we're prepared to even go into.
Now, in the opening statement to the media from that interview that you just heard, he led with talking about self-defense. Again, the court documents mention self-defense. We'll have to wait and see how that defense will be made in court when things pan out. Now, according to the judge, the terms of the bond are house arrest and ankle monitor. She told him to stay off social media, and he has to personally call her bailiff every Friday morning, not his parents, but him. And there's a list of other things that is set. And if he violates that, he'll return to the Collin County Jail.
All right, Stephen Dial live for us. Thank you, Stephen.
So you can see that, there has been a lot of intensity around this case. There are a lot of mixed emotions because these are obviously children that had bright futures ahead of themselves, that had obviously a lot to offer to society, to their communities, to their families. And it's unfortunate the way these events have turned out. But now that we've gone over the police report and we've gotten some little backstory information on Karmelo, and all we can do now is wait on the rest of the evidence to come out in order to move forward in this case. But I want to also bring up some things that aren't being covered, things that are just kind of like speculation, rumors. Now, there's a couple of different things that are being said that I want to make sure you guys are aware of. Maybe it'll come up later as fact. Maybe it will turn out to just have been rumor. But we all have been asking the question of why. Why Karmelo felt the need to bring a knife with him. So in some of the research that I've come across and some of the information that I've seen online, it is currently circulating a rumor saying that the week before this incident, Austin Metcalf and Hunter Metcalf were at a party which apparently Karmelo was attending at the same time. At this party, it is said that Karmelo and Austin and Hunter and some others got into an altercation. It is said that at that time, Karmelo took an L, that's how it's phrased, and he walked away from it. He was okay with taking his L. Now, where it gets interesting in this information is that what they say happened, and this is why I know more will come out in evidence. What they say happened is that after that party was over and they went back to school, apparently Austin and Hunter had friends at Centennial High School. And these friends, it's being rumored that these friends were attacking and provoking Karmelo Anthony. They were attacking and provoking him. And they had been doing this all week long. Now, as I sit here and I put myself in the shoes and the headspace of Karmelo Anthony, because I have been a kid that actually had a similar situation where there were girls in school who were going to try to jump me. And I knew about that. And I brung a knife to school. I did, to protect myself. None of my family were going to the school with me. They had all moved on to the next stage in high school. So this is in middle school for me. So I want y'all to understand, I could have easily, I give thanks. Hallelujah. Whew, glory. I could have easily made that same decision out of fear because you don't want to take the L. I could have easily killed that girl. But let me tell you, because it's not in me, I take that back. I take that back. I won't say it's not in me. Let me put it back. Because of the mind that I had, I decided not to use that knife. But because they heard about the knife, see, had Austin known what was in that bag, we probably would have avoided this situation as well. Because, see, when those girls knew what I had, instead of coming trying to attack me, they decided to go tell on me. So I ended up suspended and in summer school. But I give thanks for that. I give thanks for their fear. I give thanks for their courage to go tell, because it would have destroyed my life. Out of fear, had I done what I came to school to do, would have destroyed my life. But because they heard I had a knife, they backed away. And let me tell you something, I never had no more problems out of them women. Those girls, the rest of the time that they've known me. Okay? So I just want everybody to use an open mind, understand the mindset of a child, especially a scared child, especially a scared black male child. It's important that we look at the variables, because as they stated so eloquently over and over again, black male, black male, black male. So I just want to drive home the point that fear leads us down a lot of roads that we all, for all other reasons, would never have gone down. We do things because we are scared. And if the rumor is true, and I guess we'll have to wait till all the facts come out, because I'm sure they will come out. But if the rumor is true that Austin Metcalf and Hunter Metcalf saw Karmelo Anthony, at a previous engagement a week before, harassed him and beat him up, and then had their friends at his school harass him furthermore, then there sounds like a lot of things going on with Karmelo mentally. Fear, anxiety, distrust. Nobody to turn to. Clearly, no real friends to help. Because if he went to a party and he was jumped by these brothers and whoever else they had there, and he willfully takes his L, but because you guys have no humility or are not humble, we can't allow him to take his L and move on. No. We have to move into his personal space in his school, of which you do not even attend, and have him personally attacked. So I'm not safe at school. I'm not safe in the streets. If I go to a party, I may bump into you. At school, you got your friends there bumping into me. So it's a whole lot of folk interacting and bothering Karmelo Anthony. This is why I need to know all the facts. I need to be able to put myself in his shoes. I need to understand where he was when he made that decision, because I've been there. And God knows it sounded like the right thing to do to me. And had they attacked me instead of going to tell the principal that I had a knife, it would have been the same thing for me, because I had no doubt in my mind that I was going to stab her and whoever touched me first. Since we want to use the word touch to describe physical altercations in 2025, I was going to stab or kill whoever touched me first. So I stand with Karmelo. I stand with Karmelo. I understand his fear. I understand the doubt. And I understand the resolve. He made a decision that he felt he had to make. He made a decision because no one was there to help him out of the situation. So I come to a track meet, and now I'm faced with the same type of altercation from the same person. All I did was sit down. No big whoop. They could have just let me sit there and minded their own business. But we had to agitate the situation. Because we knew we had already won in a previous fight, we had to still show how big we was later on. I need y'all to do better with your children. Whether you're black or white. This tough guy persona, this, oh, I could beat up anybody mindset is getting folks killed. Learn well enough when to leave folks alone. Period. 2 young men, 1 life gone, 1 life changed forever. This is a sickening cycle in America. We can only really pray for each other out here these days, because there are no guarantees. We're coming and going faster than we can remember who was here. It's happening so fast. And nowadays, it's happening so young. I'm going to pray for both families, because my spirit will only allow me to do that. But I am passionate about the life of Karmelo Anthony. Let's make sure that justice is served for them both. Let's not condemn this young man because of a split-second decision out of fear, out of anger, or the inability to process the consequences of his actions. Because I can think that once he took that L at the party, if it's true, and he went home, if it's true, then I would think that he thought about what happened. And if it's anything like me, after I took my first L, I decided I would never take another one. I decided that by any means necessary, I'm going to win. It's not a laughing matter, but I don't know anyone that wants to lay down and stay down, especially if they're going to kick you while you down there. So we got to do better, folks. We got to do better. We got to do better at teaching our children how to manage their mindset, their emotions, how to walk away from conflict and dysfunctional situations, how not to be the agitator and the aggressor in a situation, when to keep your mouth closed in a situation. Letting people live in a situation. It's okay to walk away. It's okay to take an L. Because, as Pop said in Friday, you live. You live to fight another day. Come on, kids. Live to fight another day. Normally, we'd say put the guns down, but this was a stabbing. So this is just about violence, bullying, proper mental development. We've got to do better at working on ourselves and making sure that our children are okay. Finding out what happened, what's going on in their day-to-days. I make it my business. Even with my 21-year-old daughter, I make it my business to ask, how was your day? Are you okay? Just wanted to make sure I checked in on you. Check in on your children. Start getting into the nuts and bolts of their life so they won't screw it up later. That's all I got to say. Again, I'm Lady Kier. This is America's Worst Nightmare News. Keep an eye out for the latest update that will be coming as we continue to follow this story. We're going to follow it into the court case all the way to the end and see where the life of Karmelo Anthony ends up. Prayers up. Bless up. Talk to y'all later.